Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Matchup Plus Plus, where we talk about the basics, the rundown, the matchup that you need to the matchups that you need to know going into tournaments here in the UK. So I'm joined this week once again by Mr. Tom Lohman,
Hello.
and joined this week by Ed.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Definitely not against his will. Right, yeah. So this week we're going to be talking about Chaos Knights, Tau Empire, and by popular request, Adeptus Custodes. So Ed, if you want to bring up the spreadsheet, thank you kindly. So yeah, let's just get straight into it with Chaos Knights. So Ed, this is where we're going. This is what I brought you on for. This is where your expertise comes into play. So I'll just give us a quick rundown here on this page. So Chaos Knights, their best performing faction, as in what they play into the best, is Tau Empire, the 67% win rate, Grey Knights, the 62% win rate, and Tyranids with the 62% win rate as well. And then their worst performing armies are Chaos Space Marines, 43%, Leagues of Votan with 30%, Necrons with 48%. And I have added AdMech here with a little asterisk because they have a 17% win rate, but I think they've got under 30 games, so it's a bit, but that's a very extreme win rate.
I'll be honest, I could believe that. I know an AdMech player. He told me his list was designed to kill 2 big knights back when, Imperial Knights were the thing at the time. I could fully believe that you have a 20% win rate against AdMech. If they get to shoot you, by God, they shoot you.
So our overall win rate is 53%, play rate is 5%, and our event wins are 2%. So what do you guys think about the stats there? Is there anything there that jumps out to you surprising, or is that all expected?
The Tau one surprises me.
I disagree with the Tau one. I think this is Tau players playing it incorrectly, because a Tau list, having run the numbers and having played a little bit, well, a decent amount into Tau, Tau can kill 4 War Dogs a turn. The general vibe for a War Dogs list is if you're losing 2 War Dogs a turn, you're golden. You're loving life, you're smiling, things are going great. As soon as you lose that third one, you're like, I'm starting to sweat. Tau can kill 4, and they can kill 4 and then not lose much in the way back because Chaos Knights are very close range, and you can't realistically hide all your models and also pressure the middle. So I'm not sold on that 67% win rate against Tau Empire. I think that's Tau players playing it wrong, personally.
I can see why Grey Knights might be a pain just for not being able to get a consistent bead on them and then running away when you come and try and fight them and all that.
Well, it's the other way around. So that's the 62% win rate.
It's good into them. No,
yeah. So the reason for this one is Grey Knights love that sort of blink around and like pick at you play style. You cannot do that against Chaos Knights. None of their range damage is good, and they have tricks to get into combat, but their tricks to get into combat, they're not that great. They can't do them repeatedly. If I'm running 13 War Dogs, you need to do that repeatedly. And guess what? I'm OC8. So you can't just do some shenanigans, get onto a point. I've got massive bases. I will be stopping you from scoring any primary all game. I'm going to have the entire board, apart from maybe my own deployment zone. You can have one objective, mine, and I will have everything else. That is totally fine by me.
Yeah, I can understand Votan being good into them as well. Just lots of +1 to hit and wound gets around the toughness issue, and Votan have lots of good anti-vehicle. I've felt like if the Chaos Knights player plays a really standoffish game, it's actually very close, but obviously if you're actually going to come and mix it, Votan will kill 4 knights in a turn, as Ed describes very happily. I've done it multiple times, so you have to play that matchup extremely carefully, and I think they can definitely spin out depending on the terrain.
Yeah, I mean, those 3 armies that they perform well against, they're all noticeably armies that have issues with anti-tank, and that their common list don't take a lot of it. So that makes sense to me from that perspective. I definitely know pre-data slate Chaos Knights were by far the worst matchup for Tau. I think post-data slate things have got a bit considerably better.
This is something that I've talked about quite a lot, not on stream, I don't think, but the main issue I feel like Tau Empire had before the changes is they were activation locked. Their big killer units could definitely kill a War Dog without breaking a sweat, but they could only kill like 1 or 2 because they only had 1 or 2 damage dealing units. Now Tau have lots of damage dealing units. They're no longer activation locked. Obviously, for the greater good means if they're shooting at anything other than the marked unit, they're really inefficient. So now that they can just have multiple units efficiently shooting against multiple war dogs, that really makes the matchup quite painful, I find.
Yeah.
I think you've got to play it. I think if you play it once, you're going to get rocked probably as the Tau player, because like if you will just have Chaos Knights run at you, and that will be painful. You probably won't know how to deal with it, because Chaos Knights have their movement game and obviously combat is better than Tau, but even their shooting is solid. So it's very easy to get run over, and the battle shock thing really hits Tau hard. I know, battle shock, but it does affect Tau quite badly because they have very poor leadership, and it does negate their ability to use the army rule.
It's something as the Chaos Knights player you just don't think about at all because you can't rely on it. But as the Tau player, it has the potential to ruin your plans.
It lives in your head rent free, 100%.
Yeah.
And the drip feed from the artillery will nibble away at any smaller assets the Tau have as well, and those are often quite important, screening and other little jobs on the board.
What I will say is I think this matchup against 2 equally skilled players who know the matchup comes down to Chaos Knights will deploy on the line and will go first. And if they go first, they probably have a good chance of winning. If they go second, they have a good chance of not having any units by turn 3. I think which is a very binary, boring matchup to play, but sometimes it do be like that too.
This is also one of those win rates. I think it's worth saying. I think you often get win rates like this where it's like a nice 50s win rate for a faction that tends to attract a lot of people who run it however the hell they want. Chaos Knights are definitely one of those. People want to bring their 2 big stompy knights and smash around. And this is another one of those win rates, I think, that probably hides a build inside it that's better than that slightly belies that. I think the mass war dogs with demon allies is a contending build in the sort of upper reaches of the game. It's not one of the overpowered ones, it's not one of the overtuned ones, but it presents a very real problem and challenge. And I think it might be a touch better than 53 personally, but I guess we'll see.
What do you guys think about the Necrons there? Because there aren't many factions that Chaos Knights have a negative win rate into. I think there's only 2 more ones I posted there. So
it makes sense. Necrons really like it if you can't kill their bricks in 1 activation, and you can't do that with Chaos Knights. I think if you try to hit the anvil of Necrons on the head with the hammer of Chaos Knights, you're going to have a bad time. If you play it smart and you say, well, your bricks aren't doing anything because you don't deal damage to me, and also, haha, I have loads of OC, I'm just going to put 3 war dogs on a point, not only have OC 24, but stop you from standing on it. I think you win the game very easily that way. But it's a much more... you've got to put a lot of thought into the matchup before you start doing that. You don't... You sit normally playing Chaos Knights, you go, there's my opponent's models, I'm going to remove them from the game. They're a very go-forwards sort of list.
All right, awesome. Let's go to the next page then, I guess.
Welcome everybody in the chat, by the way. Hello, Chris Simbo and Sindri. Nice to have you here.
Yeah.
And Little Chaos Knights is the usual, isn't it? But we're about to do that.
So normally I like to put 3 units into the most wanted section. I haven't done this time because there aren't 3 units in Chaos Knights that are most wanted.
Technically 3. We'll get on to the 3rd after we've done the first 2 because I have feelings on the 3rd one.
All right, run us through these ones then, Ed.
Absolutely. So first of all, Brigands. They are fast. If you've played any vehicle lists, you know that having a 12-inch move it feels good. Anything slower than that, you sort of durdle around terrain. 12-inch move on a shooting platform is fantastic. They are relatively tough. T10. A lot of weapons now struggle to wound them. There's a lot of wounding on 5s for a lot of the sort of anti-tough infantry guns like multi-melters that now really struggle to chip through them. 12 wounds, just a nice amount. If someone's running D6 damage weaponry, it's very unlikely that they kill you in 2 shots, unless you're playing against Eldar, but yeah, when you're playing against Eldar, what you gonna do? They've just got a little bit of everything. They've got great anti-tank, they've got very good anti-infantry, they get additional AP if they're shooting the closest unit. They've got
AP5 melter, guys. AP5.
Yeah, I mean, so And I don't say this in a negative way. It's normally when you've got a good rapport with an opponent. I often just say that's 2 saves at AP. Fuck you, because you're not taking a save.
It's me with a railgun. Yeah,
yeah, basically.
What's their ballistic skill then?
It's ballistic skill 2. They just. I've said this before multiple times. Chaos Knights don't really have an army rule. They have incredible data sheets, and these 2 data sheets are amazing. The stratagem support is a great point there that Jack's put on. Dreadhounds for 1 CP, pick 2 or more war dogs. Suddenly you've got sustained hits. Just sustained hits on a unit that puts out something like 18 shots on average. That's very solid. A great one to start with. Carnivore. Faster, 14-inch move. Yes. You cannot hide from a carnivore. Knights of Shade will get to that in a second. Similarly tough.
We will.
A little less tough, I find, in practice, because they want to be in combat. You don't have an invuln in combat, which is less of a problem in 10th edition with the lower AP, especially in melee. However, if you're playing against something like CSM that do have that melee prowess, that's where you do see the win rate fall off, because you can't bully the objectives quite as nicely. However, they are weapon skill 2. They have 6 attacks on their good profile. They've got 12 attacks on their sweep. They still have a non-line of sight gun that you put on the top just to plink away some wounds. They are terrifying. Knights of Shade, 1 CP strat. You can walk through walls with 2 war dogs. You can do that in the movement phase, and you can do that in the charge phase. I said walk through walls. It doesn't matter. You can walk through walls. You can walk through your models. You can walk through enemy models. As long as you don't end in an illegal place. Beautiful. You just get... That's 26 inches of movement, theoretically, that you can go for 2 CP, and you can just walk through any walls that you want. It's very hard to hide.
If you remember how good Old Fly was, it's that. You get Old Fly on Knights. Only Knights do. None of the other shit, but Old Fly for Chaos Knights specifically. Remarkable.
It's great.
They got hops.
Yeah. I just like to think of it as the carnivores run through walls.
Kool-Aid man.
Yes, there is another stratagem that we will just very quickly touch on, because it's one that people don't typically think of. It is rapid ingress. This is one of the best armies in the game to rapid ingress. I will put 2 carnivores in reserve every game. I will bring one in on your turn 2. I will bring one in on your turn 3. It will be where you don't want me to be. I am going to then charge you because I have to be 9 inches away from you. Then I will move 14 inches. You cannot run. You cannot hide. I am coming for you with my grabby hands.
And this compounds, I think, the thing that Chaos Knights are so strong on, which is the primary, right? Because they, from their own deployment zone, they have the ability to be completely hidden to you and deny you primary on any point in the midboard. Once you add in rapid ingress carnivores, even your home objective is extremely peaky if you're not careful. So it's an army that is quite hard to get at and can basically deny primary almost wherever it wants if it can find the spaces. It's so good.
Yeah, the last game I played, my opponent got 5 points on primary in turn 2. Then they didn't get any more primary until the last turn of scoring, because I was
sounds about right.
I'm going to stand on your objective now, and also all of the other ones.
Yeah, and then that opponent put Chaos Knights in his team. Boo!
He was actually a different opponent. But
different opponent. Oh, okay.
We'll be bringing some pain there. Don't worry about it. I'll just very quickly touch on the third unit that you'll see in a Chaos Knights list. It's the Stalker. I resent running a Stalker. The Stalker is good for nothing. It has a rule on its data sheet that is terrible. +1 to wound if you're attacking a unit that is more than 6 inches away from any allied units. This has never come up in my games. I have played upwards of 30 games of Chaos Knights in 10th edition, probably upwards of 40. It just isn't a thing. Its weapon skill, its ballistic skill is 3. That's bad compared to the Carnivore and the Brigands, but you have to take one because you can only have, that's the only war dog that can be a character, and you need to take one for a legal list.
I did put Chaos Knights most wanted on this slide, so that is why I'm not.
That's very fair. I mostly
Stalkers,
just
by definition, never welcome.
Okay, so we head to the next slide. We can take a look at some example lists. Normally, what I would do in this situation is take someone's list from out there that's done well at a tournament, but unfortunately, all the lists are the bloody same, so it doesn't really matter. So in this case, there's like 2 archetypes that you're likely to see. Ed notwithstanding, obviously, with his Great and Clean one.
The Great and Clean one tech,
But as a general rule, we want to try and gather as many sort of archetypes of this as possible here. There's 2 kinds of CK lists that you commonly see. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but it's the 6 Brigands, 6 Carnivores, and a Stalker. like all war dogs. And then we have one where you drop a carnivore, or sometimes 2 carnivores, and throw some demons in. So it might be 2 Nurglings and a changeling for one. Sorry, I got a bug in my room. 2 Nurglings and a changeling for 1 carnivore, which is the example I've provided here. But some demons in for objective stuff instead of a carnivore.
So I'm playing the first list this weekend coming at our team's event only because we wanted demons to go with our CSM. The second list is objectively better. Just having the demon allies will give you so much more flexibility, better scoring. You can take 1 or 2 lone op characters, lone operative being you can't be targeted outside of 12 inches. You can take the changeling for that. You can take the blue scribes as well. The Nurglings are absolutely massive because you can forward deploy and either do teleport homers, which is just fun. If you take demon allies, you can take fixed secondaries with Chaos Knights, which is not something you're doing every game, but the potential is kind of terrifying because you bully the midboard, so you keep the teleport homers safe. But most importantly, it stops your opponent from trying to move block you in. You can spend a CP to move 2 models over move blocking units. However, they can get cute with it. They can go, oh, this is the furthest you can move and box you in that way with their footprint. But it's better to just not have to worry about that. Screen them out with a squad of Nurglings. Go, I've got a clear path to getting out my deployment zone.
That's exactly it, right? I think if with the screening that Demons offers you, you can ensure that even if the opponent is dropping in, they're not getting into the juicy stuff. You're going to be able to avoid that nightmare situation we've talked about. You're not going to lose multiple knights in a turn because you can control their points of entry, probably prevent melee coming in at you via ingress or deep striking. And just absorb the enemy and just keep doing that kind of arm's length play that CK is so good at right now.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I feel like Chaos Knights are one of those armies where if you've not played into them before, you don't know what you're coming up against. It's really easy to get punched in the face, really hard by Chaos Knights. So if you're playing against Chaos Knights, Ed, if you want to advise an opponent playing against Chaos Knights, what's like the sort of top advice you would give?
It's a lot. I think playing against Chaos Knights, if you've got good fundamentals, that is a great way to beat them. They're a very fair 40k army. They play very fair. Yes, they can do non-line of sight, which is only really a thing if you're playing against like really low armor save, thinning out Eldar, for example.
As soon as it's like 1 wound stuff, that's when it's a problem, right?
Yeah, but if you're playing, say, Space Marines, they're just going to play very fair 40k against you. They're going to put high value, high OC, high output models in the middle of the board and say, can you deal with me? You want to be trying to screen out their rapid ingress if you can. They can only come in against the board edges, so they really are telegraphed as to where they can come in. Remember, they can't come into your deployment on turn 2, even if it's your turn 2. You want to be trying to screen them out, not necessarily by move blocking them, but putting more models on the edge of an objective, so they can't stand their OC 8 on there and just snag it away from you without having to charge with like a brigand. Just make sure you've covered all of the little things. Don't overextend yourself. Make sure that you're focusing fire into a target and then moving on to the next target. It's much easier to do if you're a shooting list. Don't leave 4 war dogs on a single wound, because they are almost as effective as they were on full wounds. So I think just playing like efficient, tight 40k against Chaos Knights is the best way to beat them, because they punish anyone who plays sloppily.
Yeah, they're another one of those armies too that kind of wants to do its couple of tricks every turn and not have to deal with a situation where they need to commit a bunch of assets if they can, because they'll kind of quite happily control the primary, keep you down, and then win at the end. So in order to engineer those situations where you're killing multiple knights, you kind of have to force them to be committing multiple knights as well. So I think missions, actually interestingly, missions where there are more objectives or missions where you're contesting the primary on multiple points at once, that does force them to come and play a little bit more. And as Ed's already kind of insinuated, once the carnivores are gone, obviously the carnivores are always the first thing to go out and die on the line. Once you've dealt with carnivores, there's not really anything that in that list that's going to bully its way onto points on its own. The Stalkers and the Brigands are fairly underwhelming in combat, so you want to hit that point by the mid game where the carnivores are gone, and as Ed says, guard your objectives and then make it so that they are just relying on shooting you off it, but are struggling to actually out OC you at that point.
Okay, and the last thing I'm going to cover for the Chaos Knights is, if you're playing Chaos Knights, as a Chaos Knight player, what is the sort of number one mistake that you think Chaos Knight players need to avoid? What's going to screw them over more than anything else?
I think the hardest matchup is the gunline matchups. So I think people And I think against Tau, you kind of have to go forwards because they have so many tricks where they can shoot you and then not get shot back. But if you're playing into, say, Guard or a list that just runs lots of guns, but again plays quite fair 40k, you don't have to commit early on. You can sort of threaten the midboard, keep a couple of Carnivores in forward, like in ruins, so that you can walk through Knights of Shade through walls. I think not committing too much is the mistake that I see people making. Sometimes you do have to just full yeet your entire army, but I quite like playing a more cagey style with them if I can, and using my resources more sparingly and just burning out my opponent's primary.
Right, awesome. Right, let's move on to the second faction we're talking about today, which is Tau Empire. So that's not fair. Come on, everyone likes Tau.
Yeah, no, I actually don't mind Tau at all.
They're cruelly persecuted. So their overall win rate is 55%, their play rate is 5%, and they have 4 event wins. Their best opponents for them are Necrons, a 61% win rate, Chaos Space Marines with a 64% win rate, and Custodes with a 79% win rate. And then their worst performing factions is Chaos Knights, as we've already discussed, 33% win rate, Eldari with a 46% win rate, and Astra Militarum with a 44% win rate. There's a couple in there that are also quite low, but didn't quite have enough. There wasn't enough data there for me to justify putting them on the list. Yeah, so that's the list there. What do you guys think of that one?
It's a faction in rude health right now, isn't it? I think, and I think probably we might have solved the question of where Custodes have gone. That's pretty shocking, but it doesn't surprise me at all. Obviously, Custodes now being down to those kind of 4 very sort of mid-range infantry type assets, and Tau just go, I've got 5 turns to just dunk all of those, no problem at all. Jobs are good. And I don't think even damage reduction saves a Custodes brick from the volume that Tau can put out now.
No.
Played it yesterday, and it was.
Yeah,
it was tabling turn 2 levels of.
It's pretty bad, right? It's interesting that the Chaos Space Marines matchup is so good, given CSM have so many ways to fuck with the shooting phase and to control.
I was thinking that with the Mark and Nurgle.
Yeah, that does surprise me, but evidently it is the way it is, and obviously there's no denying that if Tau do actually get to shoot any Chaos Space Marine unit, they will kill it. So I guess that's what's happening, and Tau can just out muscle them in the dance, as it were.
I wonder if it's a little bit of people only sort of learned what a good Chaos Space Marine list is post LGT, outside of the echelons who were practicing against each other and all were running the same list. I'm wondering if there was a lot of bad CSM lists, because I think CSM.
Well, they're another one of those factions, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think if you're running that like Abaddon and 10 Terminators list, that gets absolutely smoked by Tau, because Tau can kill Terminators for days. So that would make a lot of sense to me. Stuff like Obliterators can get blunted quite heavily because the invul saves on a lot of the good Tau stuff. Sometimes you can just block a lot of that. But yeah,
I feel like the Chosen in Rhino list, that with the double Forge Fiend,
that's much more difficult.
Yeah, that's the list I think that gives Tau a run for its money.
Yeah, 100%.
Is it fair to say then, Jack, and you kind of alluded to already, is it fair to say that at the moment Tau players are sort of doubling down on their ability to kill mid-range infantry and perhaps accepting a tougher time into the very high toughness stuff that's out there?
Yeah, I think we'll go into a little bit more when we talk about the lists, but as a general rule, Tau lists to be really, really heavy on strength 8, and which is great for killing, Terminators and Space Marines and all that sort of stuff. It's really not good for killing vehicles. So anything which is like a large number of vehicles, I think Tau will tend to come unstuck against, as you can see with the Chaos Knights and Astra Militarum here. But it's mainly the anti-tank where Tau's because it is. You're right. There is definitely a skew of over-indexing. I think into like one damage profile.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's a combo that is particularly potent. And that's the thing. It's not like the Tau index is without anti-armor tools. It's whether those are reliably useful enough for you to make it worth taking. And I feel like Tau have kind of just accepted what their niche is and are really doubling down on bodying all of those.
A lot of lists have,
I wonder if my opinion on Tau is skewed, because I think Tau are a much harder matchup for Chaos Knights than they are here, because you like running that little bit of like high value anti-tank.
Yeah, Jack takes a bit more mixed arms than
so it might just be,
but he's got a wider range of guns in his list.
We will cover this. Yeah, we'll cover this list in a moment. But what I will say is that the general Tau lists are mostly strength 8 stuff, lots and lots of crisis suits. Because I obviously our opinions are going to be a bit skewed, because I'm a weirdo who runs stuff in Tau that most people don't know how to run, because I'm a special snowflake, you know.
But they're very good. I don't understand why people aren't.
Well, I've got a negative tournament win rate, so.
Well, I mean, I'm just gonna continue to take the label of the 6++ villain. Back in January, when I was playing Tau, back in 9th edition, I was of the opinion that Tau players as a whole are a very unskilled player base with a very high skill top end. And that's because you have to play on a knife edge to get the most out of it. I think that's less of a thing in 10th edition than it was in 9th. But I think there is a lot of sort of following the herd, doing what 2 or 3 people are doing and taking and saying in their coaching videos, which is not to say that that's bad for their play style, but I think it just means that there's not lots of experimentation going on with the index. Whereas
that is one thing I would say, definitely.
Having been on the receiving end,
I think the Index era hasn't seen as much creativity, certainly, as I hoped there would be. I also, to add a more generous take into the mix, I actually, certainly by the end of 9th, I was of the opinion that high level Tau play is not easy. I don't think Tau is an easy army to play to the very highest levels, because, as you say, it's on a knife edge. You have one turn, one phase and movement to solve all your problems, and if you misuse that, you don't have another way of getting out of it. And it's one of those armies where it can collapse in on itself when things start to spin out.
I 100% agree. I played them for 6 months, and I would say that I was a pretty solidly okay Tau player.
Pretty solidly okay. The 6++ way. That's what we like.
Yeah, they're a lot. I specifically picked them up because I was getting lazy, having played fucking Tyranids for however long before that. I was like, I should make myself play well instead of just play. But yes, anything else on this one?
Yeah, I think last thing to say is that Tau is it's one of those armies that they get their wins by, you got to play your fundamentals right, with movement and shooting. They're not like Eldar or Tyranids or Necrons where they win their games with movement shenanigans, resurrection, or weird stuff like that. It is a very simple game plan. They come down, they shoot the absolute living bejesus out of you, and then hope you're dead. And that's basically the game plan.
Biased Tau opinion there. Let's point out that Tau do have a fire and fade, and it is the full movement of the unit. Before we get someone saying that in chat.
Still worse than the Eldar one, but we'll move on.
Well, it costs 2 CP. Yeah, it costs 2 CP, but it's still.
They also have to shoot to use it, which you don't have to do for the Eldar one.
Yeah, definitely.
They can just fade. They don't actually have to fire. I think that's we can go to the next page there, I think. Right, so Tau Most Wanted. Obviously, we've mentioned it several times. The Crisis Battle Suits. 99 times out of 100, it'll be with the Cold Star, and that bumps the units to movement 12 and gives them assault weapons, so they can use their data sheet rule without sacrificing shooting. So an 18-inch advance. Most common of that you'll see is triple cyclical iron blasters and a shield generator, which gives them a ridiculous number of shots, 9 per model. So a 6-man unit has 54 shots. Fire and fade, they are eligible to fire and fade. Shoot, move 12 inches with the Cold Star. In this situation, the Cold Star, again, most of the time will have exemplar of the Cal Yon, so you can have your Cal Yon activated from turn 2. The play here is 52 shots with 3 rolls to hit. 6 is a sustained 2, and you just get 70 odd hits at strength 8, AP2 damage 2. That's the play. And that's what you've got to be aware of. That's what you're going to be ready for. Can you take that many shots, or can you avoid? Is probably the better way to counter that. Avoid that many shots. Second up is the Tetras, probably the second most common unit you're going to see. It's 80 points for 2 models, and those 2 models are T7, 7 wounds. That's basically the best thing about them, and they don't need to shoot ever to get the best out of them, so they can always do mission actions, make some awesome mission pieces, and when they spot, they give full rerolls to hit, which as we mentioned before. The models are ludicrously tiny, so they're really easy to hide. They infiltrate. They're just the perfect support piece. They're everything you could ever want.
They fill in all the gaps, don't they? That you can use, take up space, get on points, do actions, make your crisis even scarier.
It's the ultimate like efficiency, right? It's like, okay, we don't need this unit to shoot, so we're going to take all the guns off, and then we're going to use that to drop the points way down. We're going to use that as justification.
100%.
And then the last one I'm going to cover here is the broadside battlesuits. One of the sort of 3 anti-tank units you have in Tau. It's the most common one you're likely to see. Each one gets 2 strength 12, AP 4 damage, D6 plus 1 shots with devastating wounds. You can have some plasma guns, you get some Seeker missiles, or you can ignore hits. There's various different builds on them. But they've got a ton of wounds. They've got 8 wounds each, and they get a C+ armor save. They're pretty tough. They pay for that by being slow.
Very worth having, just as a hard target troubleshooter, right?
They just sit in a spot and they just throw, you know, a very hefty number with sustain 2 of strength 12 shots at you, and that's what they do.
The Overwatch, once the game gets to that point, is no joke, right? You really don't want to risk stepping into the open in their firing lanes because you'll just get done.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm a bit sad the Ghost Kill didn't make it in, Jack. The Ghost Kill's fucking sick.
So I will cover this, but basically with Tau lists is there is a weird situation where you get Crisis and you get Tetras, and then beyond that there's like 8 or 9 units that you can see in a Tau list.
Quite
with
a nice
various mix. Like there's nothing that's like super good compared to everything else. So there's like 2/3 of the Tau Codex, or a bit more than that probably, is very well internally balanced. There's only a couple of stinkers in that book.
It actually also it has a very generous smattering of blown off. I think that's one of the things that's important for the Tau Index, is that you can actually, there's about at least 3 ways to get loan up of different flavors into the list, which obviously, I mean, I think to an extent is important for Tau, but all helps with the mission play and drawing them onto your guns, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The Ghost Kill, the Ormvar, and the Firesight Marksman, and Shadow Sun.
I've seen this with like multiple Firesight Marksmen in just for the cheap loan up, and I can see the logic.
So if you want to pick us over to the lists, okay. So this is a list that's done well pretty recently. Craig Douglas from Mind Goblins at the Brighton 40k Tournament 5.
Oh, nice.
So he's got Farsight, Shadow Sun, a card that I forgot to change this. It's 3 6-line blasters, not missile pods, with shield generator and example of the Galleon. 2 units of 2 broadsides with rail rifles and plasma and stuff. A unit of 6 crisis with all with 6-line blasters, shield gens, shield drones. 2 units of 3. A unit 10 breaches and devilfish, a ghost kill, 2 stealth suits units, and 2 units of 2 tetras.
Just quickly before you go into this, for anyone who doesn't know Tau particularly well, because this is a matchup video, Crisis at their base are a 4 wound model with a 3-up armor save, I believe. Is it a 2-up save or a 3-up?
3-up,
yeah. 4 wounds, 3-up save. That's not particularly scary. Each suit can take 2 drones, obviously no charge, because that's how 10th edition works. Each shield drone gives them +1 wound, so that puts you at a base of 6 wounds per model. Then you put a shield generator on them. That puts you on a 4-up invuln. That combination just makes them unreasonably difficult to kill.
With a 6-up feel no pain strat as well to go with it. It just means there's not many types of gun that are going to get through these quickly.
Well, I've always actually thought of it in the opposite way. All types of guns go, because you can find anti-tank in there. You know, D6 plus 2 damage weapons, damage 3 weapons, damage 4 weapons. You know, that's all like the same. They're all efficient to shoot into Crisis.
I think this is a fairly typical playing against versus playing as.
Yeah.
You're like not happy 100%. To have any gun shot at you, and we're not happy to shoot any guns at you.
100%.
A great compromise. No one is happy.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where, I mean, if you have loads of wounds in a unit, you want to have it on as many models as possible, because then you can like deny excess damage, if that makes sense. So it's like less This is absolutely like such a a pedantic thing as a Tau player.
No,
You're 100%
I
right,
get
Ed. Me getting into
the efficiency definitely does drop off as well once they start losing models, right? They do feel the loss of output.
You can throw anti-tank in there, and it's not going to feel bad because they have so many wounds. I guess is the key thing there to think about. But yes, I mean, looking here, we've got a gajillion cyclic iron blaster shots, which are strength 8, AP 2, damage 2. We got breaches for some objective support, the ghost kill, which is what Tom brought up before, for some very tough lone op stuff, and then some stealth battle suits and tetras for more spotting and more mission play.
Farsight's an interesting addition there.
Yeah. Do you want to explain what Farsight does? He's very
Farsight's thing is he has 4 strength 10 attacks, AP 3 damage 3, I think it is. And then once per game he can AP2 damage 3, sorry.
Yeah.
And once per game he can give himself +1 to full rerolls to hit and wound.
Yeah.
That's his thing in combat. But his special rule is he gives his unit +1 to wound if they're within 9 inches of the target.
That. So typically you rapid ingress a little Farsight unit and then run on to push on something. So it just helps a bit with getting around those higher toughness units that are the problem Jack discussed. So that's typically how you'll see him used.
Yeah, he is also the cheapest commander, which is interesting. But yeah,
sexiest model as well. Let's face it.
He's very sexy. I have a plinth over there where I put my Farsight.
Oh,
if I had one, but I don't. Right. Yeah. So in terms of playing against a list like this, again, you've got to be expecting like the deep strike bomb of 52 strength 8 APT damage 2 shots. Super vulnerable to armor of contempt.
Yep.
Anything that reduces AP is really good against that unit. Anything that reduces damage, if you've got like 2 wounds, like so Custodes or Imperial Astra Militarum has a 1 for vehicles, -1 damage. That's really good for that. It is short range, only 18 inches, so you can zone them out. What else? There was another thing that I was going to say, and it's completely fallen out of my brain. That's so frustrating. So yeah, your stealth battle suits and your tetras are in a list like this. These spotting units. They can spot and do objectives. They can still spot and shoot. So that leaves them like a lot of leeway there. Trying to think of something else that is a good.
It looks good. It's just a really flexible list. I guess this would be a good time to bring up the difference here that a lot of people are running, which is the triple cyclic iron blaster that you don't typically run yourself.
Oh, yeah, sure. So most lists that you will play will run all cyclic iron blasters and all the crisis suits.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge number of shots, and mathematically, they do the most damage per gun against all targets, with the exception of T3 5-up save, in which case the flamer is better. But the problem with that is every time you overcharge the iron blaster, you take 1 hazardous check per gun you have. So if you have 3 guns, 3 checks. Apply that to a 6-man unit with a character in there. That's like 21, 22 tests. I don't like doing that. I think that sucks. And I also am very aware that yeah, exactly. So that becomes you come down, you kill 1 thing, and then you're basically ineffective. In addition, the -1 AP, -1 damage stuff that really hurts them as well, and really limits. When you go all in with a list like this, and as we were talking about before, if you all in on this just 1 damage profile, strength 8, AP2 damage 2, if you come up against something that you can't deal with that damage profile, you're just kind of you just SOL really, you know. So me personally, I run 2 plasmas, which are strength 8, AP3, damage 3, but only 1 shot. So it just sort of gives me that leeway. It's also extra range as well, 24-inch range rather than 18. It just gives you those extra tools to deal with, like weird factions you might come up with. If you do have to play against Custodes, if you invest your 6-man unit and then all your damage is now 1, and then you've also killed, you killed 3 Custodes, and then you lose Crisis suit and a half.
I
Deathwing Knights
wouldn't.
is a really big one.
I wouldn't be surprised. The reason I bring this up, I wouldn't be surprised to see more people starting to put plasma in. We just need one of the big content creators to start running plasma on their list. The reason being, Marines, they've just got a codex. Every detachment has Armor of Contempt.
Yeah, Votan have the exact same issue. Like the lists that have existed that are all spamming damage 2, they have to adapt now because Marines just no sell it hard.
Yeah. So if you're playing Tau, keep an eye out for them. You will not kill Deathwing Knights with a Crisis unit like this.
No.
So you will kill like 2, I think is the average. So don't
try.
But then there's other things like Big Knights, for example. That big unit of Crisis will just kill a Big Knight, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't even sweat.
So to answer Sean Cateswell's section, how they no sell it. When you put -1 AP on the AP2 unit, then on say Terminators, Deathwing Knights, for example, their 2 up becomes a 3 up.
Yeah.
And they're also -1 damage, so your 2 damage becomes 1. So it reduces the damage output of the Crisis unit by 75% or something like that.
So if you have a Marine list that's going Terminators and Redemptors,
Redemptors
that's just 2 up saves, -1 AP where you need it, -1 damage, which just means the efficiency of this completely drops off the cliff.
Yeah, and the plasma having that extra AP and extra damage.
So plasma just gives you that. It's just that little bit harder to neuter, isn't it?
Yeah. Regular Terminators could do the same thing as well. It's just a combination of both.
Yeah.
And then I guess in terms of playing against Tau, things to keep in mind. Battle Shock absolutely ruins Tau's day. If they are Battle Shock, they cannot use the Army Special rule, either to spot or be spotted for. So Battle Shocking really hurts them. The other thing you do is Rapid Ingress is a funny trick you can do with Rapid Ingress. No one's done it against me. They probably will now. But if someone deep strikes a Crisis unit in, expecting to fire and fade it behind a wall, you Rapid Ingress some little bit of nonsense behind that wall where they're going to go, and then all of a sudden they're stuck in the middle of nowhere and are about to get punched in the face.
Shout out Inceptors.
This is not an army that has artillery, so Rapid Ingress is huge because they will have, once they've moved for the turn, if you can find a pocket that threatens them that they can't see, you're fine. There's other than what they're going to do, like run far sight into you. Like they don't have a solution.
I'll do it.
And then I guess the last thing is, especially when you have lists that have a lot of Crisis, they have very high mobility in the sense of distance they can move. They can't go through walls, but they can move a very long distance of 18 inches. So a lot of the time between Deep Strike and that move, you're not going to be able to get out of line of sight of the Tau. What you can do is get out of line of sight or kill the units that are spotting for the Tau.
Yeah.
And if you kill the Tetras or the stealth suits, or you get to a position where they're not going to be able to see you, you're going to cut the damage output of these damage dealers, the Crisis, or whether it's Riptides or Sky Rays or Hammerheads, whatever it is, broadsides. You're going to cut their damage output tremendously. So if you're playing against them, getting rid of or hiding from they're also mission play pieces, so getting rid of them is always a good idea.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the stuff you can usually get to, and it does die. It requires committed effort, but once they start losing those assets, that means the really valuable stuff has to go and stand on points, which they don't.
Greatly reduces the damage output.
Yeah.
If you guys have anything else you want to bring up about Tau, I'm trying to.
No, I think those are the straightforward enough things. I think it's an army in a very strong spot. I think maybe it's got a little bit too much stuff on the board, but there's a few armies like that. And I think, people need the experience and the reps and the familiarity with what it wants to do and the pacing to deal with it, really.
Yeah, I guess I'll just round out with calling you out. Any of you big content creators who play a lot of Tau, put some plasma in your list. Let the herd experience the better weapon.
Go on, Kyle Grundy. Think of the pure ties.
I wasn't going to call anyone out by name. It feels a little too pointed. That's not what I was trying to say. Now you've done it, Kyle, you lovely man. Put some plasma in your list.
Get
just
some
play some
plasma
games.
Just things to keep in mind. There's no real tricks with Tau. They're not going to catch you out like Eldar do with Phantasm, or squad tactics from Space Marines. They don't want to do anything like that. It is literally just shoot you and hope you die.
The one trick that obviously it's more a general feature or bug of 10th, is that Tau can do the fire and fade, and they can charge, and they can do that out of reserves, right? So with your own objectives, you do want to be
fire
careful.
and fade with in charge.
Oh, can they not?
No.
Oh, interesting.
Good edition.
That helps a little bit. But fire and fade and charge, they can cover a lot of ground and go and like nick a point off you, so you do just need to factor that in, because I think the OC on crisis suits is okay as well, isn't it?
It's OC2 per suit. So they can move 18, but then they can't charge, or they can fire and fade. They can't charge. They can move 12 and charge. So
yeah,
that's okay.
Or they can just move 18 and then fire and fade another 12.
Yeah.
So 30-inch movement.
Shoot what's on that objective, and then put 14 OC on it, and be like, okay, get rid of it.
Oh yeah, no, I've never experienced that before. That sounds fun.
All right. So we've got one more faction to cover, which is Custodes, by popular demand. So Custodes, they perform best against Imperial Knights with a 63% win rate, Grey Knights 62% win rate, and Leagues of Votan with a 53% win rate. That's basically it for the positive win rates on the Custodes. They perform worst against Thousand Suns with a 31% win rate, Chaos Space Marines with a 28% win rate, and Tower Empire with a 21% win rate, which is pretty rough. Their overall win rate is 44%. They have a 5% play rate, and they do not have any event wins in this current meta. So what do you guys think of that one?
Do you want to take this first, or do you want me to be incendiary?
I mean, we all know I'll just slag them off. So you go first.
I think you're all playing your armies wrong.
Yes.
I think, and this isn't backed up by practice.
Evidence.
This is more just sort of general theory crafting. I've noodled some lists together. I think the way to play Custodes might be back to real pure MSU. I'm talking like loads of 3-man squads. You take 3-man squads with the Blade Champion in, so you can advance and charge them, get some threat on the board. Having played against fast melee that can advance and charge, that is genuinely really terrifying to play against in this edition. But then you just like control the board, you sit behind terrain. This is very terrain dependent, but if you're playing on a terrain heavy format, or anywhere where you've got terrain near objectives, I think playing that MSU style again was good. I think people got sucked into playing those unkillable bricks. Now the bricks aren't unkillable. You kind of need to adapt again. And I think once people stop trying to stat check their way out of, the straitjacket that they're in, I think the win rate will really go up, and it'll go up against all of the armies that just want to kill you dead in one activation. Chaos Space Marines want to shoot you in the open. Well, if you're not in the open and you're, spread out across the board, sure, they can charge you, but suddenly that advantage goes away a little bit because you can fight first, and then not just getting the forge field value. So I think when Adeptus Custodes players make better lists, I think they're really good.
Yeah, I think the pendulum was swung all the way to sort of like 2 units of 10. We're going to use the free strats to have double fights first and double -1 damage.
Yeah.
And you are not going to kill me. And then when that's taken away, instead of swinging the other way on the pendulum, they've kind of just tried to go as far as they can towards what it was before. Which is the worst of both worlds, unfortunately.
I think looking at this here, we can definitely see that Dev Wounds are a problem from T-Suns and Chaos Space Marines. We can see that very high volume damage of like decent damage shooting is a problem. That's what the other two armies are really packing, and Magnus packs that for Thousand Suns. Knights doesn't surprise me because they just body Knights on points, right? They just absolutely go through it with the rerolls to wound on the objectives. Grey Knights don't shoot, so they're going to have to come and fight you. They've got less assets than you do. You're going to fight first. You're going to put a massive hole in them. Votan's an interesting one. I guess it's just that they can just outmuscle Votan on the objectives.
I'm wondering if it's a little bit of how slow Votan are. It's very difficult to draw the bead until it's too late. Yeah,
that might well be the case. And so Custodes basically had an issue where they put out an index that, in I'd say a slightly toxic way, was the combat index. It was better at combat than anybody else. If you ran a melee army into Custodes, you died and you lost, and that was like how melee in 10th edition started. They still, to an extent, have that, but the meta itself has moved on from that. You've got a lot of mobile shooty armies out there, and also Custodes have less assets. So even the combat control game is more vulnerable than it was. And a lot of the other Custodes units aren't priced particularly well or aren't particularly functional at their jobs. So they kind of, as Ed says, I think probably a go wide infantry scoring and control type list is probably the way to do it. But they're sort of, a bit like GSC. They did one thing particularly well. They've now been nerfed for that one thing, and they're still sort of scrabbling around to find the way forwards at this moment in time, I think.
I am very interested as well, and this is going a bit avant-garde. I'm interested to see a list with 3 of the grav tanks, the grav tanks, and then 3 allied, either 3 allied armigers or Canis Rex. I think there might be something there, but again, this is not something I've put on the table. I've just been noodling around with various lists.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a look at the most wanted then.
Still at play rate 5%. They're always popular, even when they're not.
That is true. They're a fun army to play.
Oh, yeah.
That might be working against them, though, right?
Yes. Awful to play against, but my god, they're great to put on the table.
So dull to play against, it's unreal.
So, most wanted for Custodes, we've got Custodian Guard, Custodian Wardens, and Alaris Terminators. Custodian Guard and Custodian Wardens are very similar units in terms of like war gear and stuff that they get and stat line. Their main difference is that Custodian Guard reroll 1's the wound, and then full reroll was the wound on objectives when they're on objectives, I believe it is.
Yes.
And then Custodian Wardens.
This is the heavy hitter, right? This is the thing that clears things. The Guard just slap like an absolute freight train because you can have them with sustained hits as well.
Yeah.
And then the Custodian Wardens swap that out for once per game 4+ Fear No Pain.
Yep.
And then I believe it's -1 to wound if they're being shot by something that's high toughness in them if they have a character in there.
That's correct.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So like a bodyguard unit. Both units are high OC. They can get to 3 OC per model. So they're pretty good at once they're sitting on a point. You do actually have to remove them. You can't. It's very difficult to just steal a point from them.
Yeah. And they've got access to -1 damage, don't they? It's not as easy as it was, but it's still good.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they're Custodes. They do what they do. And then Alaris Terminators, their main thing is that they can jump back into reserve at the end of the opponent turn. So they're really good for secondary mission play. That's sort of their main function.
I really like MSU Alaris Terminators.
I love it as well. Absolutely
3 units of those is how I'd start writing my list. Maybe one gets
Lee,
cut,
when you watch this, just run your Alaris, mate. They're good. They are good. Don't wait for permission.
So 3 Alaris, 3 Wardens with blade charge, 3 bike units.
We're going to write this list. Any thoughts on Custodes Dread says Cindy? I've actually not seen them out intent to know what I think. I'd need to look up what they
lost
have.
movement, so they just don't get anywhere. They're a I believe, and I could be wrong. I think it's a 6-inch move on the Dreadnoughts, which is so sad. Because when I looked at the data sheet initially, I was like, okay, they're a little bit less than they were, but I'm still interested in trying them. And then I realized they'd lost that movement. As someone who loves playing vehicles, I've tried to make Dreadnoughts lists work, and you just never run the box dreads because the Space Marine box dreads, that is, because they only have a 6-inch move. You can't get them anywhere meaningful. That's the thing that kills them. Movement is the name of the game.
Yes, they are indeed movement 6. Their unique rule is that they have a Phoenix gem.
Yeah.
So they get back up with D6 wounds left when they die on a 2+.
This is the Codex one, not the Special Forge World one. And weirdly, I think that might be the best of the lot, because if you're playing into a meta where you can't put anything out, especially if you're running MSU, having a Dreadnought to stand on an objective, get shot, stand back up, that's quite valuable.
Yeah, especially in that town matchup, right? Because they don't have another phase to do damage. I
like the stand back up Dreadnought as well.
Yeah. I think I could definitely tech one into my list if I was playing MSU.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, and then I've got an example list available here.
Ooh.
So this is Aaron's list from LGT. I've got his name on it. I'm just so professional. But we've got 2 Blade Champions, 1 Mysticis Hunter. We've got Trajan, 2 units of 5 Guard, 2 units of 4 Guard, 4 Prosecutors, 2 Alaris Custodians, 5 Wardens, 5 Witch Seekers, a Callous Assassin, and Inquisitor Kyria Draxis. What do you guys think of that one?
It's kind of what we were talking about, isn't it? It's trying to do what it was doing before, but with a bit less.
Yeah, It goes fairly wide. Like, he's got a lot of those small units in. I'd like to see it go a little wider.
Yeah. I think you break it down even into its smaller parts and push that. But I think there's a few amazing things in here. We talked about Blade Champions. Advance and Charge on a board with good staging is really good, because once those guard connect, they will kill whatever they like. Trajan's really, really good. The Ceaseless Hunter upgrade, so you get a fallback in charge, but you also get a move if someone comes within 9 of you. Really nasty on one of those blocks to kind of play that sort of sneak around game, no sell, people trying to drop in and shoot you, all that sort of stuff. And then enough tech in here to play the cards and play the mission and the rest as well, right? I think it's the issue it has, and the issue Custodes have, is that once you lose, if you lose 2 or 3 of those bricks, your sort of offense and your holding ability just folds. So if you lose those early, it's really tough.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think.
All right. So if you're playing into Custodes, what are the things you got to watch out for?
Rapid Ingress.
Rapid Ingress is a big
This is the other very good army to play Rapid Ingress with.
Yeah,
I've lost games to Custodes Rapid Ingress before.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, you gotta really think where you leave your units in your turn 2 and 3, and make sure that if you're playing a shooting army, there is nowhere that they can realistically get behind a wall or behind an angle and then move 6 and then charge you comfortably. That's the main thing to look out for.
Yeah, it's one of those armies where you have to focus like massive amounts of force on a portion of it and break it down properly and clear it. They've got that kind of toughness that if you try and engage on a bunch of fronts and bounce, you're in real trouble, and then they'll counterattack. The fight last triggers off with units on objectives, so you can play around that a bit. If you are a combat army, you just have to hit them not on the objectives. I think Trajan might just have fight first, full stop.
It's one of the abilities that he can pop once per game.
Yeah, so that's really, really tough, but it does have some degree of play around. Likewise, the Custodian Guard, that's where they're dangerous, when they're on objectives. That's when they do their best work.
Yeah. That's the thing that the Custodes player will never sell you. Like, they have a fight first, but they'll never say,
oh yeah, no, they literally
we're
never
on
do.
an objective.
Yeah, there's no need for caveats like that would give you some play around, right? And then, Ceaseless Hunter we've just talked about, but that's a unit you have to be very careful not to just get swindled by, because it can do you at an important moment in a game. It can run away, or it can actually come forwards, get further onto a point. And another thing like this, it's a little bit like Tau, whereas you can see that a lot of the filler in the list is basically just little idiots that will die. So if you have ways to get in and kill those, that again forces the Custodes player into a position where they have to put the valuable stuff in the places of the board that they want to put the chaff, and then you're in a nicer spot from there as well.
Okay. Yeah, Sindri in the chat is asking about the Venatari. I've got a friend who has been trying them. I think they're still way too expensive for what they do. I don't believe that they give you the value for the points. I think just like, yes, you can do the free rapid ingress. So I think they'll catch out bad players is how I would look at Venatari, because you can theoretically rapid ingress multiple units. I believe the way that works, because it's the repeat the strat for free, yada yada. I don't think that is a good strategy if you're trying to beat good players, because as soon as they're aware of how that works, they just won't give you an opportunity to bum rush them on their turn 2.
Okay. So in terms of like funny like strats to catch people out, obviously we spoke about the -1 damage to fight first. The other one I want to bring up is it's like a resurrection strategy where you can bring a model back.
Yes.
That's one that can catch people out because you get a couple of inches of extra movement. It's on the command phase, so you can use that to flip an objective, I believe. So that's all good stuff you need to be aware of when you're playing against Custodes.
It's just a very solid toolkit, and I think this is one of those armies where you're engaging them in melee, you're going to come off worse most of the time, and they have the toolkit to make that the case.
Very similar to Chaos Knights. Don't risk leaving multiple units that are wounded but not finished, because
yes, exactly.
You can bring back one model per unit. You can only do it once a turn, but it's just being like,
this unit you've just given them movement. Yeah.
And then they have a stratagem to have more attacks if they are below starting strength or half strength, yada yada. So that one-man Custodian Guard unit out of 3 suddenly becomes 2, suddenly hits you harder than you expect, gets an extra 3 inches of range on it as well. It's very difficult to deal with if you leave them those little piecemeal units to work with.
Completely.
Yeah. And I guess the last thing I want to cover here is Custodes are one of the factions that make very heavy use of Forge World units. We spoke about the Salvage Arm already. Is there any other like Forge World units that people maybe don't necessarily think about that are worth keeping an eye out if you're playing against them?
I've just not seen
No.
them used. It's very rare to have a moment in time where for Custodes the answer is just the normal stuff. But at the moment it seems to be. I mean, the Caladius is a good tank. Don't get me wrong. That is a good tank. It shoots well. It's tough. 2-up save. An absolute pest to deal with. Can get lethal hits. So, and also it gets the martial guitars, which is just funny. If you want a karate tank, that's a good time. So I mean, I think the Caladius could still absolutely serve a purpose in a Custodes list that wants to go toe to toe with someone at range, because it's the Blaze Cannon. It's a really good gun.
Yeah.
Really good gun. But that's about it. The Dreadnoughts seem to be suffering. The Dreadnoughts were the thing for a time, and at the moment they're in limbo, and that's one of those things that you hope a book gives a new lease of life, which is worth saying isn't far off for Custodes, right? They are getting a new book in the nearish enough future.
Sindri says, go Gadget Palace. I was just about to say, the Palace Grav attack tank is maybe one of the things that you could
it's quite a cute little thing, isn't it? Yeah.
It's 120 points. I didn't run them when they were 95 points when I was playing Custodes in previous editions, so I don't think they get there when they're more expensive than that, and I think a little bit worse. But they are just a nice little skirmish unit. There is value to that. So maybe that's something that someone will put 2 of them on the table, and I'll go, you know what, actually, in this list, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I would say of units that we haven't seen that much of that are very valuable right now, I would say Valerian doesn't get enough of a look in. I think Valerian gives his unit Armor of Contempt. And I think for a 2-up save army in the current environment where there's a lot of AP2 guns out and about, I don't think that's at all a bad thing to have.
I haven't looked at him for quite a while, but that does sound enticing.
Yeah.
I guess on the subject of characters trade is another one that you see quite commonly. Ignoring modifiers for his unit, with the exception of AP. Obviously quite strong stuff like Necron Lich Guard, which is a common sort of gatekeeper unit, very good for that. And then his Moment Shackle for 2+ invulnerable save, fights first, that sort of stuff.
Goes in a Brick of Wardens. They pop that Portfolio Bane. They're very hard to shift. They can be a real problem once per game. Yeah.
Is it versus melee jet? That's useful. Still very nice.
All right. So I believe that's everything pretty much covered for the Custodes. So thank you very much, Ed and Tom, for joining me on this one, for helping me out.
This was an army, by the way. They insinuated that they might rebalance Custodes upwards a little bit, and I just hope that they're careful when they do.
I just hope that they don't.
This isn't one of those armies that, when it is good, it is extremely tedious for the game, just because of the nature of what it does. So I hope they find a healthy middle ground for Custodes. I would love to see.
I feel like there's factions in the game, when they get changes, that some factions get sledgehammers and other factions get scalpels. I feel like Custodes are a sledgehammer faction. It's not going to be 5 points per model on Wardens. You know what I mean? It's going to be something
where they are in the game at a moment in time, and they're at the lower end of where they like to be. So let's see what they do, and fingers crossed they don't just roll back everything, because I don't know that we want to live in that world, but we'll see.
I do not.
Okay, so the next episode, I'm looking at Tyranids, and then the other 2 are undecided. So if there is a faction that you want us to cover, please put it in the comments of this video. And then while you're there, you can like it and you can subscribe to the channel. And then we're going to keep producing these every other week as we get more data in from tournaments and stuff like that. There is a ton of other content on the channel right now, so I highly recommend taking a look at that. But for us today, that is it. This is the end of the video. Goodbye.
Thanks for having us, Jack. It's been great.
No worries.
Thanks everyone on the chat. Thanks for tuning in. Love this chat.
Until next time.